My name is Armin Bergmeier and I teach late antique, Byzantine and Islamic material culture of the Eastern Mediterranean in Leipzig, at Leipzig University in Germany. My work explores changes and transformations across cultures and the relationship between visual and textual sources. I've been a Fulbright Fellow at Columbia University in New York and Andrew W. Mellon Fellow at the Center for Byzantine Studies at Boğaziçi University in Istanbul, and I'm looking forward to being a fellow at ANAMED this fall. I'm recording this little video at Hammond Castle near the small fishing town of Gloucester in Massachusetts. Although this modern castle has been built in the 1920s and has often been discredited as unauthentic and as a kind of Disneyland, it can in fact teach us a lot about the reuse of older artifacts and their placement in new contexts. Here, real medieval objects have been incorporated into the structure of the monument, along with newly produced artifacts that are made to look like they were from the past. Thereby, the structure invokes a past and makes it come to life, something museum displays often aim for with more or less success. A similar approach to artifacts from the past, that is spolia, and the creation of pseudo or ex novo spolia, also happened in the medieval period. Around the 13th century, the use of ancient and late antique sculpture spread across most regions of the former Eastern Roman Empire, notably in Venice we find this, in Byzantium of course, including the Empire of Trabzon, the Empire of Nicaea, and we find it a lot actually in Seljuk Anatolia. My project looks at this widespread practice and its implications for concepts of identity, which were not divided along language, ethnicity, and religion. The examples from material culture have thus far always been considered in isolation from each other, but by studying them together, their widely used practices emerges that I argue serve to claim a shared Roman cultural identity across cultures we often see as distinct. In contrast to the common understanding of spolia as expressions of cultural conflict and the superiority of one culture or religion over another, I argue that the use of spolia was in fact a visual strategy to express appreciation, identity, and a shared heritage. San Marco in Venice, which I'm sure you all know, is a good case in point. Here, the mass of late antique and Byzantine spolia has always been interpreted as a sign of triumph over Byzantium. But none of the alleged spoils can in fact be associated with the Fourth Crusade and the military conquest of Constantinople if we look closely at the sources. Furthermore, a large amount of spolia actually needs to be identified as pseudo-spolia, that is ex novo creations by Venetian craftsmen in the 13th century, just like here at Hammond Castle. Modern scholars often describe Venice as being very Byzantine, but Byzantium is a modern construct invented in the 19th century. In the Middle Ages, Byzantium, as you all know, or many of you probably know, was the Eastern Roman Empire until its conquest by the Ottomans in 1453. Therefore, by displaying such spolia on their facades, the Venetians sought to associate themselves with Rome, or what they thought of as Rome. When compared to practices of the display of reused objects in Byzantium and in Seljuk buildings, it becomes obvious that these spolia displays all share a common aesthetic and a common goal. That goal was to demonstrate their investment with the Roman past and to display it proudly on outside facades. Examples from Seljuk Anatolia are plentiful and can be found on many mosques, caravanserais, and on some city walls, such as the, unfortunately now destroyed, citadel walls of Konya. The Anatolian Seljuks even called themselves Roman Seljuks, Rum Seljuks. The many instances of spolia display in Seljuk buildings are only further proof of this proclamation of cultural self-identification. To date, they have been studied by very few scholars of ancient Byzantine or medieval archaeology. But spolia do not just tell us about past historical consciousness and past identities, they also let us unlearn some of our modern assumptions and narratives. So my project therefore also questions commonly held assumptions about the West's claim to exclusive ownership of Greco-Roman antiquity. This claim has been instrumental in the creation of national ideologies and the construction of history in modern nation states, and I will try to undo some of those notions that seem so convincing, but actually can be complicated if we look at particularly the Seljuk spolia, but also the Venetian ones, and when we look at what Byzantium actually did with its past in the material culture.